Madrid was founded in the 9th century under Muslim sovereignty and is the only European capital founded by the Islamic civilization. And yet, the knowledge of Madrid past is scarce among the population. Its history is understudied, and much of its heritage has been erased through centuries of urban renovation aimed at portraying a more continental identity of the capital of the country. The presence of the Muslim communities in the peninsula is not limited to the Middle Age period, as it extended to early modern history, and its social, cultural, and patrimonial heritage is still present today. For this purpose, the Center of Studies about Islamic Madrid, part of Islamic Culture Foundation, is framed in the recent effort to recover the Islamic tangible and intangible heritage of the city of Madrid, understood as a tool to promote tolerance and fight hate speech, by blurring the line of the dichotomy as them established between the European population and the Muslim communities. Although the project is focuses in Madrid, local history is used here as an example from which results and conclusions can be drawn about the Islamic heritage for the rest of the country, the Mediterranean region, and Europe. The Islamic Culture Foundation and his main project, Medomed, Culture and Landscape of Mediterranean and Middle East, relies on the idea that this common heritage, its recovery, and its appreciation reinforce the collective identity, promotes social cohesion, and develops an appreciation for a cultural diversity. Thus, it becomes a tool for a peaceful coexistence by building trust and understanding. We must confront the reality that many inhabitants don't know the true origin of the city. Many people believe that Madrid was founded by Christians, but they are wrong. They support this idea due to an intense campaign of the Crown and the Church, when Madrid became the capital of the kingdom in 1561. It was unacceptable of that time, thus the capital of the most important Catholic empire of the world was a small village created by Muslims. Therefore, a story was made up, a story according to its new condition. Madrid was founded by the Emir Mohammed I as a military fortress located in the border of Al-Andalus. But Madrid was not only the border of Al-Andalus, but also the border of Islam. It was founded for three reasons. The first one, to prevent the attacks of the Christian kingdoms coming from the north. The second one, to protect the people of the border of Toledo, which was the second most important city in the emirate from its external and internal enemies. So Madrid was one of the cities surrounding Toledo, along Talamanca de Jarama, Buitrago de Lozoya, Alcalá de Henares, Talavera, or Calatalifa. These cities protect Toledo in case of an attack, but also control the city because it was a rebellious place due to a clan, the Banu Salim, who disputed the power to the Umayyad. And the third reason, to prepare the razzias. A razzia was a small incursion into Christian territory. They took money, they destroyed the village, but nothing else. It served to show Christians how vulnerable they were in case of an attack. Almanzor, one of the greatest rulers of Al-Andalus, was in Madrid preparing one of these attacks. At the very beginning, Madrid was a military fortress, but it evolved and became a Medina. So there were an Alcázar, the walls, monumental gates, a mosque, a souk, and the most important thing, a stable population. All the Muslim sources of that time refer Madrid as a Medina, and the only Christian book talked about a civitas. So Madrid was a city in Al-Andalus. We have some archaeological remains, but not one like the Islamic Wall of Madrid. It was discovered in 1953 by two archaeologists because it was attached to two ancient palaces. The Islamic Wall is the oldest monument of the city. It is more than 1,000 years old and it's a millenary monument, and yet it is invisible and known for the majority of the people and the travel guides. Monuments of Al-Andalus, there are many, but from the time of the Emirate, not so many. That's its value. This section, called Cuesta de la Vega, measures 120 meters and it has 5 towers, quadrangular and muslin indeed. There is also a tiny gate that served as an access when the main gates were closed at night. The entire wall measures 800 meters of perimeter for 4 hectares, 12 to 14 meters high to avoid ladder, and it is made of silex and limestone, which are the typical stones of the region of Madrid. So we are here in the most iconic symbol of the Islamic Madrid. By the way, there are lots of local legends involving Muslims in Madrid. For example, did you know that locals are popularly called cats? Well, the stories say that one day when the troops of Alfonso VI arrived at the Medina, a soldier climbed with a dagger the entire wall to change the Islamic flag with a crescent that did not exist at that time for the Christian one. Impressed, the king said that he had climbed as a cat, therefore he and his family will be known as cats. Nowadays, to become a cat, it is necessary to have at least 2 generations of Madrileños, your parents and your grandparents. If not, you are a kiddie or you are an aspirant to become a cat. Behind me, it stands Luhanese House and Tower, which is the oldest civil monument of Madrid. It was built in the middle of the 15th century, and it looks like a classic Toledo house with all the elements from the Mudejar art, tile, masonry and bricks, especially the Islamic decoration on the top of the tower with a gallery of horseshoe arches, and then 2 gates with a horseshoe arch. Both of them are unique in Madrid, one made of bricks, while the other is made of stones. Both are very impressive, but the second one is a masterpiece because it conserves the marks that the workers made to get paid in exchange of their stones. However, it is very deteriorated, and despite being recently restored, the gate remains the same, and every year sinks more and more because it must bear with the weight of the entire structure. That's why we have to act now before it's too late. Madrid was ruled by the Muslims until the year 1085, when it was conquered by Alfonso VI, King of Castilla and Leon. We like to underline the word conquest and not reconquest, because you cannot reconquer something that it did not exist before, such as city. Madrid fell into a pact between Alfonso and Al-Qadir, the Muslim king of Toledo, who departed to Valencia in exchange of delivering Toledo and the rest of the kingdom, including Madrid. That's why we believe in Madrid there was no battle or violence in the city. Some of the Muslims ran away from the city while others stayed. They were called Mudejares. Mudejar comes from the Arabic Mudejar, which means domesticated or the one who stayed. So Mudejares were the Muslims who lived in a Christian territory, maintaining their faith, their custom, tradition and religion in exchange for attacks. From this, it appeared the Mudejar art, which is the union between the Christian art and the Islamic art from the 12th to the 17th century. It became very popular in Castilla and Aragon. The crown and the church liked very much the Islamic art, and they decided to incorporate it into their churches and palaces. The architects were the Al-Arifes, which comes from the Arabic Al-Arif, the architect, the master, the expert. In Madrid there were several, and the Al-Arifes had a very good position in the city and lots of influence in local political affairs. The classical elements of the Mudejar art are the wooden ceilings, the tiles, plasterwork, and the bricks to decorate and to build. Mudejar art, born in Spain, was exported to the colonies, and that's why we can find very good examples in Europe and in South America, in countries like Mexico, Peru, or Venezuela. However, Mudejar art is a very polemic term, because it was born in the middle of the 19th century. Historians are divided. Some of them accept the term, while others reject it because they support the idea of a Christian art with Islamic influence. But there is a third group which say that Mudejar art is just an evolution of the Islamic architecture. We continue with the Mudejar art. From the medieval churches, the 10 medieval churches of Madrid, only 2 remain in the city center. One of them is San Pedro Viejo, from the 13th century. It is one of the oldest religious monuments of the city. However, only the crypts and the tower are original. The tower is very simple, made of bricks. There are 4 small windows, one in each of the sides at a different height to allow the light to enter. This type of tower looks like a minaret, and that's why sometimes Muslims visiting Madrid believe that there is a mosque in the downtown. Something very curious with San Pedro el Viejo is that there is a plaque placed by local authorities which say that the mosque of the Muslim quarter was located here, the one that the Muslims built when they came to live here after the conquest. However, it is a mistake because the mosque was in Las Vestiges, 500 meters from here. There is a map, the only one from the 16th century, where we can see a small building which is oriented to the southeast. And then there is a document which says that a man bought the land where the old mosque was located. So there was no mosque here. Anyway, in Spain, we believe that all the churches were built on mosque, but this is not like this. In Madrid, it didn't happen here, but in Santa María de la Almudena. We are now in La Latina, but its real name is La Morería because it was here where Muslims came to live after the conquest of the city. In that time, it was normal that Christians removed Muslims outside the city walls. However, Christian king decided to build a second wall to incorporate the new neighborhood and in the case of Muslims to prevent from having an easy access to Toledo, full of Muslims who may join them and attack the city. Later, in the 15th century, a second Morería appeared in the city. So there were the old one here in La Latina and the new one near Plaza Mayor, where those who had better jobs lived. We know the existence of some structures in La Morería. For example, the wedding house, unique in Al-Andalus to hold weddings, the mosque, and the halal butcher shop. This was very funny because Christians were not allowed to buy Muslim meat except if the Muslim meat was better than the Christian one, and that always happened. And then there was a hammam, but in the 16th century it was closed because even though the entire population was already Christians, it was considered a Muslim tradition. Muslims depend on the crown and organize themselves in the Al-Jama, an assembly with their own mayor. They were considered third-class citizens, but their position improved over the years. Some of them were very influential in local political affairs, but everything changed with the arrival of the Catholic kings and the conversion to Christianity. We know how important water was and water is for the Islamic civilization, and Madrid was a very good example. Below us, there is a viaje de agua, the only one in Madrid which has an Islamic origin. It is an Islamic gallery used as a pipeline to bring water underground to the Medina. Madrid was surrounded by water. There were several streams, the Apple River proves an important aquifer. In fact, Madrid and water are very related. The name of the city means place with lots of water, because Madrid comes from the Arabic Madrid, which was the name of the Islamic canalization underground. The entrance to the Muslim quarter was here, Puerta de Moros, and outside was located the cemetery, the Maqbara, one of the most important discoveries of Islamic Madrid. It is under Plaza de la Cebada to the south, far away from the city center, from the Medina, as is tradition in Islam. In 2006, During the works in a small house near the market, more than 40 tombs from the 9th to the 16th century were founded, and all of them were oriented to the southeast. Heads were looking at Mecca. The Muslims lived here until the conversion to Christianity. In 1502, 250 people were converted to Christianity. They were called New Christians or Moriscos. But before the conversion, some of them ran away to northern Africa while others stayed. They chose the land instead of their religion because they maintained their faith, their religion secretly. When they were converted, they were allowed to live here 10 years free from taxes and Inquisition. After this period of 10 years, some of them were reported to the Inquisition, which knew that many Moriscos were still practicing Islam secretly. And, for example, they were tested by offering wine and ham. If they refused it, they went straight to the Catholic court. By the way, another test consists in avoid the name of the Prophet Muhammad. If you pronounce Muhammad in public, you went straight to the Inquisition. 100 years later, Moriscos stopped living in Madrid when the king ordered at the beginning of the 17th century the expulsion of all the entire community from Spain. There were lots of explanation, but in the end it was an internal affair, corruption, and the crown disguised it to divert attention. In Madrid, at the beginning of the 17th century, there were around 1,500 Moriscos living in the city, due to the arrival of the Muslims who lived in Granada and were relocated after the rebellion of Las Alpujarras. But only less than 400 left the city. We don't know what happened with the rest, but we do know one thing. That was officially the end of Islam in Madrid. However, nowadays we have begun to recover the history and the memory of that Islam in Madrid, because Islam never disappeared from the city, and now it is back.